The massive dome of the Galactic Council stretched high above the assembly floor, its crystal walls catching the light from distant stars. Hundreds of alien beings filled the chamber, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and warbles that the universal translators worked constantly to convert into understandable speech. Commander Victor of the Hegemony Fleet walked toward the speaking platform, his blue-scaled skin gleaming under the bright lights. His proposal tablet felt heavy in his clawed hands as he approached the center of the great hall. Today would be simple, he thought. Just another routine expansion request that the council would approve without much debate. The various alien species watched him with mild interest. The tall, bird-like Aethery preened their feathers while waiting. The rock-skinned granite lords sat perfectly still, as they always did. The floating jellyfish-like drifters pulsed with soft colors of boredom. It was a typical day in the Galactic Council. Honored members of the council, Victor began, his voice echoing through the chamber as the translators did their work. I come before you today with a proposal from the Hegemony Fleet. We request permission to expand our territory into the Outer Rim systems. Several representatives nodded with approval. The Outer Rim was mostly empty space with scattered planets that no one had claimed yet. Resources were always needed, and the Hegemony had a strong military to protect new colonies. Victor activated his tablet, and a holographic star map appeared above the assembly. Hundreds of systems glowed in soft blue light, marking the proposed expansion zone. These systems offer valuable minerals and suitable worlds for colonization. Sectors 7 Alpha through 12 Gamma contain 17 planets with atmosphere and 12 asteroid belts rich in rare metals. The council members leaned forward to study the map. Representatives whispered among themselves in their native languages. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until Elder Kindle of the Watchers raised one of her 4 arms. Commander Vekitar. Her ancient voice carried easily through the chamber. These coordinates you show us ... They are very close to the Sol system. The effect was immediate and strange. The constant background chatter of the assembly died away completely. Even the drifters stopped their gentle pulsing and went completely still. Every single being in the chamber turned to stare at the star map with what could only be described as fear. Victor looked around in confusion. He had expected some discussion about resource rights or territorial boundaries, but this reaction made no sense. Yes, Elder Kindle, there is indeed a small yellow star in that region. Our scans show it has several planets, but they appear to be of little value. Mostly water and rock. The silence stretched on for long moments. Even the mechanical hum of the air recycling system seemed loud in the quiet chamber. Finally, Elder Kindle spoke again, her voice carrying a weight that made even the youngest council members pay attention. That system, she said slowly, contains humans. If the chamber had been quiet before, now it became a tomb. Several representatives actually backed away from their positions, as if the very word was dangerous. The Granite Lords, who never moved quickly, somehow managed to shift their massive stone bodies away from the star map. The Aethery's colorful feathers turned pale white. Commander Victor felt completely lost. In all his years serving the Hegemony Fleet, he had never seen such a reaction to what seemed like a simple territorial discussion. I don't understand, honored elder. What is significant about this ... human species? Around the chamber, representatives began withdrawing their support for his proposal. The Veltar Trade Consortium's speaker actually stood up and walked away from the assembly. The Crystal Hive's representatives started making rapid clicking sounds that the translators labeled as extreme distress. Even the usually aggressive war singer clans were shaking their heads and backing down. Elder Kindle, S4 eyes fixed on Commander Victor, with an intensity that made him want to step backward. She was old, older than most civilizations, and had seen the rise and fall of empires across the galaxy. When she spoke, her words carried the authority of centuries. "Sit down, young commander," she said firmly. "Cancel your proposal immediately and take your seat. There are things you must learn about the most dangerous species in our galaxy." Victor's military training told him to stand his ground and demand an explanation. But something in the elder's voice made him obey without question. He deactivated the star map and moved to an empty seat, his mind racing with questions. As he sat down, he noticed something that chilled him to the bone. Every single species in the chamber, from the smallest insect-like beings to the massive stone creatures, was nodding in agreement with Elder Kindle. Whatever these humans were, every civilization in the galaxy apparently knew to fear them. Elder Kindle moved to the center of the chamber, her ancient form commanding absolute attention. "Before we continue with any other business today," she announced, "Commander Victor will learn why humans are off limits." The chamber remained perfectly silent, waiting for a story that would change everything the young commander thought he knew about the galaxy. Elder Kindle moved slowly to the center of the great chamber, her forearms gesturing as the holographic display came to life around her. The assembled aliens watched in complete silence as images began to form in the air above them. 847 years ago, she began, her voice carrying the weight of ancient memory. A small species achieved faster than light travel for the first time. They called themselves humans, and they came from the third planet of that yellow star system you wish to expand into. The hologram showed primitive spacecraft, crude by galactic standards, but functional enough to cross the vast distances between stars. Commander Victor leaned forward, studying the simple designs with professional interest. The ships looked weak, almost fragile, compared to modern hegemony vessels. Their first contact with our civilization was peaceful. Elder Kindle continued. A human named Taman led their diplomatic team. He was young, eager to learn about other species, and genuinely excited about joining the galactic community. His smile was constant, and he asked endless questions about our cultures and technologies. The display shifted to show the early meetings. Humans appeared remarkably similar to several other species in the galaxy, though they seemed more emotional than most. Commander Victor watched as the human diplomat Taman shook hands, tentacles, claws, and various other appendages with obvious joy. Dr. Sojin worked with our scientists, sharing human knowledge freely and learning everything she could about galactic medicine and physics. Captain Hyan Wu commanded their small escort fleet with great care, always following proper protocols, and never showing aggression toward anyone. The humans in the recordings seemed almost childlike in their enthusiasm. They studied alien art with wonder, listened to strange music with genuine appreciation, and shared their own cultural treasures with anyone who showed interest. Commander Victor found himself almost smiling at their innocent excitement. They integrated into our trade networks quickly, Elder Kindle went on. Human merchants were honest in their dealings. Human scientists collaborated eagerly with researchers from dozens of species. Human artists created beautiful works that combined their culture with ours. Many of us found them ... charming. The hologram showed human settlements on alien worlds, human children playing with young beings from other species, human teachers working in galactic schools. They seemed to fit naturally into the diverse community of spacefaring civilizations. But the Dominion Empire saw something different when they looked at humans. Elder Kindo's voice grew darker. They saw weakness. They saw a species that could be easily controlled, easily conquered, easily enslaved. The mood in the chamber shifted as images of the Dominion Empire filled the display. Their massive warships and heavily armed soldiers had once been the most feared military force in the galaxy. Commander Victor had studied their tactics in military school, though the Empire had fallen long before his birth. The Dominion began testing human responses, Elder Kindle explained. They made small demands at first, extra taxes on human trade goods, restrictions on where human ships could travel, requirements that humans ask permission before establishing new colonies. The humans in the recordings looked confused and hurt by these demands, but they complied peacefully. Diplomat Taman filed formal protests through proper channels. Dr. Sojin continued her research. Collaborations, despite growing restrictions. Captain Hyanwu followed new flight patterns without complaint, even when they added weeks to his shipping routes. The Dominion saw this compliance as proof of human weakness. Elder Kindle continued. They increased their demands. More taxes, more restrictions, more humiliating requirements. When humans continued to respond with diplomatic protests rather than military action, the Dominion concluded that they were dealing with natural slaves. Commander Victor frowned as he watched the escalating harassment. In his military experience, such treatment usually led to rebellion or war. The humans' peaceful responses did seem unusually passive. The Dominion commanders grew bolder. Elder Kindle's voice carried a note of warning. They decided that humans needed a clear demonstration of their place in the galactic order. They planned what they called a minor disciplinary action to establish proper respect for Dominion authority. The display showed Dominion fleet movements, their warships taking positions throughout human space. The invasion force was massive, designed not just to defeat human resistance, but to completely overwhelm any possibility of successful defense. The humans saw the fleet build up and sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, begging for mediation. Ambassador Meek-young practically cried as she pleaded for peaceful resolution. The Dominion ignored these requests and prepared for what they expected to be a very short war. Elder Kindle paused, her 4 eyes scanning the silent chamber. Every being present seemed to lean forward, waiting for what came next. The Dominion chose their first target carefully. She continued. A civilian transport ship called the New Soul, carrying families and supplies to a small human colony. They wanted to make an example that would terrify other humans into immediate surrender. The hologram showed the transport vessel, clearly marked as non-military and broadcasting civilian identification codes. It was large but completely unarmed, carrying 200 human civilians, including many children. What happened next, Elder Kindle said quietly, changed everything we thought we knew about humans, about consciousness, and about what it truly means to threaten an entire species. The chamber waited in breathless silence for the rest of the story. The holographic display showed the New Soul moving peacefully through space, its civilian markings clearly visible on the hull. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge, checking navigation reports while his crew prepared for another routine supply run to the outer colonies. In the passenger sections, families with children settled in for the long journey, completely unaware of the Dominion fleet waiting in the shadows. Elder Kindle's voice grew heavy, with memory as she continued the tale. The Dominion attack came without warning. 5 warships dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire immediately. They wanted to destroy the transport quickly and completely, leaving no survivors who might complicate their message to the rest of humanity. The display showed the attack in terrible detail. The New Soul had no weapons, no shields, no way to defend itself against military vessels. The Dominion ships tore through the civilian transport in less than 30 seconds, leaving only scattered debris and the silence of space. Commander Victor watched the destruction with professional detachment, until he noticed something strange. In the recording, at the exact moment the New Soul was destroyed, monitoring stations throughout the galaxy registered an unusual energy pulse. It was brief, almost undetectable, but it spread outward from the attack site at impossible speed. What you just saw, Elder Kindle said quietly, was the moment humanity awakened. The hologram shifted to show human settlements across the galaxy. On Earth, President Min-jung stood in the middle of an important government meeting, his mouth open mid. Around the conference table, ministers and advisors sat frozen, their eyes suddenly vacant and staring. On Kepler Station, Engineer Yujin dropped her repair tools, the metal clanging loudly in the maintenance tunnel as she turned to face the same direction as the president. Thousands of light years away, on the farming world of Haven, Dong Hin straightened up from his crops, dirt still clinging to his hands as he looked toward a point in the sky that his eyes shouldn't have been able to see. Every human in the galaxy stopped what they were doing at exactly the same moment, Elder Kindle explained. Billions of them, separated by vast distances, all turning to face the direction of the attack. They stood like that for exactly 17 minutes. The display showed the eerie scene repeated on dozens of human worlds. Construction workers stood motionless on building sites. Shopkeepers froze behind their counters. Children stopped playing in parks and turned as one toward the distant stars. Even human infants in their cribs turned their heads in the same direction. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the moment passed. Humans everywhere resumed their normal activities. President Min Jun continued his sentence as if nothing had happened. Engineer Yujin picked up her tools and went back to work. Farmer Dong Hyen returned to his crops. Commander Victor felt a chill run down his spine, but they didn't know what had happened to them. They had no memory of the pause at all, Elder Kindle confirmed. When questioned later, every human insisted they had been working normally the entire time, but something else had begun during those 17 minutes of silence. The hologram shifted to show human military vessels throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been following routine patrol routes suddenly changed course. Admiral Inho's fleet near the Andromeda Gateway abandoned their scheduled exercises and jumped to hyperspace. General Su Young's forces at the Galactic Rim left their defensive positions and began a high-speed run toward the course systems. Within 6 hours, every human military vessel in known space was moving toward the attack site. Ships that had been separated by thousands of light years somehow coordinated their movements with perfect precision. They arrived from dozens of different directions at exactly the same time. The convergence was unlike anything Commander Victor had ever seen in his military training. Fleets that should have taken weeks to coordinate their movements came together in a matter of hours, forming battle formations that no single commander could have planned. The Dominion fleet was still celebrating their easy victory when the human armada appeared, Elder Kindle continued. 300 ships materialized out of hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding the 5 Dominion vessels completely. The battle recording showed what happened next. The human ships moved with mechanical precision, their weapons fire coordinated down to the microsecond. They didn't attack in the chaotic manner of most space battles, with individual captains making independent decisions. Instead, they moved as if controlled by a single mind. The Dominion commanders tried to surrender when they realized they were outnumbered, Elder Kindle said. They broadcast desperate messages offering to negotiate, to pay compensation, to withdraw from human space forever. The human fleet did not respond to any communication attempts. The destruction was swift and absolute. Human weapons tore through Dominion shields as if they weren't there. When the enemy ships tried to flee, human vessels were already positioned to block every escape route. The Dominion fleet was systematically dismantled, piece by piece, with surgical precision. When it was over, Admiral Inho contacted Human Command to report the engagement, Elder Kindle said. He seemed genuinely confused about how he had known to bring his fleet to that location. General Su Young couldn't explain why she had abandoned her defensive position. Every human commander involved claimed they had simply felt they needed to be there. The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. Commander Victor stared at the holographic display, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. That, Elder Kindle concluded, was our first glimpse of what humans really are. The holographic display shifted to show the aftermath of the battle, focusing on the human fleet that had just destroyed the Dominion ships. Elder Kindle gestured toward the recordings with one of her 4 arms, her ancient eyes reflecting the weight of terrible knowledge. After the battle, our scientists began studying what had happened. she said slowly. Dr. Zakdal, of the Science Directorate, spent the next 20 years trying to understand how humans had coordinated their response across such vast distances. The displays showed research stations and laboratories where alien scientists worked frantically to solve the mystery. Commander Victor watched brain scans, genetic analyses, and energy field measurements scroll past in endless streams of data. The first clue came when we realized that humans don't communicate the way we do, Elder Kindle continued. When Admiral Inho was questioned about the battle, he insisted he had never received orders to move his fleet. General Su Young claimed she had made the decision independently. Captain Wonseek said he just knew where he needed to go. The recordings showed human officers being interviewed, their faces showing genuine confusion about their own actions. They remembered making decisions, but couldn't explain why they had made them. It was as if they had been following instructions that came from inside their own minds. Dr. Zakthal discovered that human brain patterns change when they're under stress, Elder Kindle explained, but not in the way we expected. Instead of becoming more chaotic, their minds become more organized, more connected. The display showed brain scans taken during the 17-minute pause. Every human tested showed the same pattern. Their individual brain activity had synchronized with something larger, something that the instruments could barely detect. We learned that humans are not truly individuals as we understand the concept, Elder Kindle said, her voice dropping to a whisper that still carried clearly through the silent chamber. They appear to live separate lives, have different personalities, make independent choices. But beneath that surface, they are all connected to something much bigger. Commander Victor felt his scales prickle with unease. Connected how? Think of them as fingers on a hand, Elder Kindle replied. Each finger can move independently, perform different tasks, seem completely separate from the others. But they are all part of the same body, controlled by the same mind. When the body is threatened, all the fingers respond together, whether they want to or not. The hologram showed human settlements across the galaxy, highlighting the connections between them. What had appeared to be random expansion patterns suddenly revealed themselves as carefully planned network nodes. Every human colony, every trade route, every diplomatic mission was positioned to create a web that spanned known space. Humans had been mapping our entire civilization without realizing it, Elder Kindle continued. Every time they established a new colony, they were placing another sensor in their network. Every trade agreement gave them access to new systems. Every cultural exchange let them study our capabilities. The display zoomed in on individual humans going about their daily lives. Teacher Na Young worked in an alien school, seemingly focused only on education, but her location gave the human network perfect observation of a major military training facility. Merchant Subin traded goods across 3 star systems, appearing to care only about profit, but his routes connected human settlements with strategic resource deposits. They weren't spies, Elder Kindle emphasized. They genuinely believed they were teachers, traders, explorers, diplomats. The network used them without their knowledge, gathering information through their everyday activities. Commander Victor stared at the evidence in growing horror. Are you saying they were preparing to conquer us? Or to absorb us? Elder Kindle replied. The network was studying every species in the galaxy, learning our strengths and weaknesses, mapping our territories and resources. If humans had decided we were a threat to their survival, they could have eliminated us all with the same precision they showed against the Dominion fleet. The hologram showed battle simulations based on the human network's capabilities. Every major alien military installation was within range of seemingly innocent human settlements. Every important trade route passed through systems where humans had established research stations or cultural centers. But they didn't attack us, Elder Kindle continued. After destroying the Dominion fleet, the human network went back to sleep. The individual humans resumed their normal lives, still believing they were separate people making independent choices. The display showed human diplomatic missions in the months following the battle. Ambassador Haywan attended memorial services for the Dominion dead and spoke movingly about the tragedy of war. Dr. Junho offered medical assistance to Dominion survivors. Captain Mi-kyung delivered food supplies to Dominion refugee camps. They genuinely wanted peace, Elder Kindle explained. The network only awakens when humans face extinction. Most of the time, they prefer cooperation to conquest. They find other species interesting, valuable, worth preserving. Commander Victor noticed something in the recordings that made his blood run cold. But they don't know about the network, do they? They think they're just ... normal people. That's what makes them so dangerous, Elder Kindle confirmed. They are the galaxy's apex predator, disguised as harmless prey animals. They eliminate threats through an unconscious immune response, while genuinely believing they are peaceful creatures who would never hurt anyone. The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs as the implications became clear. Somewhere out there, humans continued their daily lives, completely unaware that they were components in the most sophisticated weapon system the galaxy had ever seen. Elder Kindle raised her forearms for silence as the uneasy murmurs in the chamber grew louder. The holographic display shifted once more, showing more recent events that made Commander Victor's stomach twist with understanding. The story does not end with the Dominion, she said firmly. Over the centuries since that first awakening, 3 other species have tested human limits. Each time, we learned more about how dangerous they truly are. The display showed the Trade Consortium, a powerful merchant empire known for their ruthless business practices. Commander Victor recognized their distinctive golden ships from his academy studies. 15 years ago, the Veltar decided to wage economic war against human colonies, Elder Kindle explained. They used their vast wealth to manipulate prices, destroy human trade agreements, and force human settlements into poverty. They believed they could starve humans into submission without direct military action. The recordings showed human colonies struggling as food shipments were delayed, medical supplies became impossible to afford, and basic necessities vanished from markets. Human families went hungry while their children fell sick from preventable diseases. The humans filed formal complaints through proper diplomatic channels, Elder Kindle continued. Ambassador Jungmin spoke passionately to the Galactic Trade Commission about the suffering of human civilians. The Veltar representatives laughed at her tears and increased their economic pressure. Commander Victor watched human diplomat Jungmin pleading for mercy in the recorded sessions. Her genuine anguish was obvious as she described children dying from lack of medicine while Veltar traders demanded higher and higher prices. Then, in the space of 1 month, every major Veltar trade leader died, Elder Kindle said quietly. Accidents, all of them. A cargo ship explosion here, a life support malfunction there, a reactor breach in another location. 47 deaths across 12 different star systems. The display showed the accident reports, each one completely believable on its own, but together, forming an impossible pattern. The probability of so many coincidental deaths was mathematically impossible. The humans seemed genuinely shocked by these tragedies. Elder Kindle continued. Captain Wansik sent rescue ships to help Veltar survivors. Dr. Soyoung offered free medical treatment to injured Veltar traders. Ambassador Jungmin attended every funeral and gave touching speeches about the fragility of life. The recordings showed humans expressing sincere sympathy and offering real assistance to their former tormentors. There was no sign they understood their own role in the Veltar deaths. 8 years later, the Keth militancy made their own test, Elder Kindle said, as new images appeared. They were a warrior culture who believed strength was the only truth that mattered. They began raiding human shipping lanes, capturing cargo, and taking prisoners. The display showed Keth warships attacking human merchant vessels. The raiders were brutal and efficient. leaving behind burning wrecks and families wondering what had happened to their loved ones. The humans begged the Keth leadership for negotiations, Elder Kindle explained. Captain Dong Hyen personally traveled to the Keth homeworld to plead for the release of human prisoners. The Keth war chiefs mocked him as weak and cowardly. Commander. Victor watched the diplomatic recordings with growing dread. He could see the pattern forming, though the humans in the videos remained completely unaware of what was coming. 3 weeks after the diplomatic mission failed, the entire Keth raiding fleet was found drifting in space, Elder Kindle said. Every ship intact, every crew member alive and unharmed. But all their weapons had been surgically removed. Their navigation systems had been deleted. Their communication equipment had been taken apart piece by piece. The recordings showed Keth warriors floating helplessly in their disabled ships, completely bewildered by what had happened to them. Their vessels had been systematically stripped of anything dangerous while they slept. Captain Dong Han immediately organized rescue missions to help the stranded Keth fleet, Elder Kindle continued. He brought them food, medical supplies, and transport back to their homeworld. He seemed genuinely concerned for their welfare. The final test had come just 3 years ago, involving the Zephyrian Empire's attempt at political manipulation. The display showed their elaborate plan to turn human colonies against Earth through propaganda and bribery. The Zephyrians believed they could destroy human unity from within, Elder Kindle explained. They spent fortunes creating false evidence of Earth's corruption, bribing human officials, and spreading lies through human communication networks. For months, the Zephyrian plan seemed to work. Human colonies began questioning their government. Human officials started making suspicious decisions, and human communication networks buzzed with angry accusations. Then, in a single day, the entire Zephyrian intelligence network collapsed, Elder Kindle said. Every spy was exposed, every bribed official confessed, every secret operation was revealed to the public. The evidence was so perfectly timed and coordinated that it could only have come from someone with access to all Zephyrian communications. The recordings showed Zephyrian agents being arrested across dozens of worlds as their cover stories fell apart simultaneously. Their spy network had been unraveled in hours. Ambassador Haewon attended the Zephyrian Prime Minister's funeral after he died from the shame of exposure. Elder Kindle concluded. She gave a beautiful speech about the importance of honest diplomacy and the tragedy of broken trust. Commander, Victor stared at the evidence, finally understanding the terrible truth. They eliminate threats without even knowing they're doing it. Exactly, Elder Kindle confirmed. Humans are apex predators who believe themselves to be harmless herbivores. They are kind because they can afford to be kind. They are peaceful because nothing truly threatens them. The vote on the expansion proposal was unanimous. No species would ever again be permitted to approach human space in the visitor gallery. Human observer Yoonji continued taking notes on the Council's fascinating discussions about territorial management, completely unaware that she was the subject of their greatest fear.